Happy Monday, everybody. Hope you're having a good day today so far. Had a good weekend. I pretty uneventful weekend. Just I spent Sunday relaxing and also uh rewatching a Netflix series. I happened to notice that the second season comes out on December 17th, and I have been waiting. I think I want to say, if you don't know what I'm talking about, the name of the show it's called The Witcher, and I believe that it was books first. And sorry, my phone went off. I believe that it was books first. I don't know exactly where they came from, but it's really good. And yeah, it was 2019 when the first season came out, and it's a bunch of little short stories technically, and they even have like a cartoon of it and a video game, which I don't know anything about the video game because I don't really play video games, but it's really, really good. And when I saw that the second season was finally coming out, I was so excited. And so I was binge watching it to just catch back up on it, um, refresh my memory of things that I'd forgotten. So if you like things like that, I would tell you to go check it out. It's really, really good. I don't know who any of the actors are. I just know that the main character, Henry Cavill, very gorgeous man, so gorgeous, and I don't know, it's really good, and I'm really into like the fantasy sci-fi type stuff. Um, and then anything that's like action packed, fighting, gunfights, anything that has to do with like war, things like that. I'm not one of those girls. I do not like chick flicks. I don't like romance movies. I'm just not into that kind of stuff, mostly because it's so fake. It's like, and I understand like fantasy is fake as well, but I get tired of seeing like the Hallmark movies. I watched one called Love Hard, and I only wanted to watch it because Nina Dobrev was in it, and I hadn't seen her in anything since The Vampire Diaries. So I was like, well, I'm just gonna check it out. And while it was okay, it was still like, the same old thing, two people that you would think would never be together end up getting together, falling in love, blah, blah, blah. It's just so overrated and I hate it. So, anyway, go check out The Witcher. It's really good. And while you're at it, why don't you go to the Scott Ford show? Go check out his latest episode where me and him had a conversation. And I think it was a pretty good conversation, to be honest. I really enjoy talking to Scott. We always have a good time, I think. Anyway, let's read today's daily promise. If ye then, being evil, know how to give good gifts unto your children, how much more shall your heavenly Father give the Holy Spirit to them that ask him? Luke 11:13. How can we doubt the abundance of gifts from our heavenly Father? We who are steeped in the ways of wickedness still are able to recognize good gifts. How then can we imagine that God, who is good beyond measure, would give us less than every spiritual blessing? In truth, the trove of his riches is immense, and he gives freely to everyone that he calls his child. So rejoice. Okay, so since the Kyle Rittenhouse trial is over and thankfully ended in not guilty verdicts, there are a lot more trials that have been coming. And one thing I noticed, I saw a post on Instagram and I shared it on mine, which was you had the Ghislaine Maxwell trial started. And shortly after that, and I noticed it was about day 3 or day 4, then you hear about the new variant, and how, oh, we don't know anything about it, but we got to take all precautions and be very careful and maybe more lockdowns. And I just find that very interesting that as this trial is unfolding, we're distracted by this. Not only that, but then there's distractions with the Jussie Smollett trial coming up, the Kim Potter trial of who shot and killed Dante White. Um, right. Dante Wright, not White. And Cardi B has a trial coming up, and I have no idea what that one's about. You have the the arguments at the Supreme Court with the Mississippi abortion ban. So a lot of stuff is happening, and it's hard to tell what is being brought up to distract from what. And I think that some of this is being brought forth right now as distractions to more important things going on. I think the Supreme Court arguments are important. I think the Ghislaine Maxwell trial is very important. I don't feel like all that other stuff is quite as important. These are big things happening. And that is where I think we should be focusing. And I just thought it was very interesting. So I do have a few things about that trial. Um, this, I don't know if it's really necessarily anything too important other than I just found it interesting. And it's how Ghislaine kept a degrading, is how it's being referred to, 58-page list of rules for Epstein house staff. Now, on YouTube, I'm probably going to have to be very careful about what I say about her and Epstein. Maybe even mentioning his name might get a strike on my channel, but I'm going to be very careful about what I say. And this is by Ash Shao. Alleged trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell apparently kept a 58-page list of rules dictating how staff at the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein's estates were supposed to act, including the demand that they, quote, see nothing, hear nothing, say nothing, end quote. So the New York Post reported that Epstein's former housekeeper, Juan Alessi, testified at Maxwell's trial about the very degrading way the couple treated staff. A 2005 manual detailing what was expected of staff was provided as evidence. And from the Post, it says, I'm assuming this is from that manual, staff needed to, quote, anticipate the needs of Mr. Epstein, Miss Maxwell, and their guest, end quote, stated the introduction of the manual, which made clear that disgraced media baron Robert Maxwell's daughter was sharing the master bedroom with the money man at the time. Quote, remember that you see nothing, hear nothing, say nothing, except to answer a question directed at you, end quote. It warned on the first page of orders. The rules detailed a slew of instructions for each room, especially the master bedroom, which had to be kept at 60 degrees and have, quote, JE and GM telephone directories near the phone, end quote. So a separate bedroom was not listed for Maxwell, though she had her own bedroom. Additionally, staffers were ordered to keep a, quote, gun placed in bedside table drawer, end quote. That's strange. The manual also showed that Maxwell and Epstein were perhaps paranoid at the time of its writing, which was before Epstein was convicted for having relations with underage girls. Unless otherwise instructed, never disclose Mr. Epstein or Miss Maxwell's activities or whereabouts to anyone. Do not be bullied. Simply be firm. The staff were also required to advise Mrs. Maxwell of any strange telephone calls or inquiries and any unusual behavior, such as strangers lurking around the vicinity of the property. The rulebook also demanded that each of Epstein's cars was to have no less than 3/4 of a tank of gas and must contain at least $100 inside. Alessi, according to the Post, testified that he, quote, was supposed to be blind, deaf, and dumb and say nothing of their lives, end quote, referring to Maxwell and Epstein. The rulebook also insisted staff always have a, quote, polite aim to please approach and never discuss their personal problems, end quote. They were also told to be cautious of noise levels and noise. In other words, quote unquote, unobtrusive is the key. And more from the Post, it says, do not eat or drink in front of Mr. Epstein, Miss Maxwell, and their guest, stressed the rules, which also forbade chewing gum and allowing cell phones to ring while dealing with the couple or their guest. The house phone should be answered in 3 rings or less, the book warned. You do not expound on the weather or any other subject when entering bedrooms, the guide warned. This is like the weird, what is wrong with talking about weather? That's very strange to me. Staff had a list of common words and phrases that were banned, including yeah, sure, gotcha, you bet, I dunno, and even no problem. They were instead told to say the likes of with pleasure and you are quite right, and if criticized, reply, it was completely my fault. I will make the changes immediately. What people will do for money, honestly. Staff were told that items in pockets must not create a bulge or be visible, and that they should avoid using strong perfume or aftershave lotion. Staff was also required to rotate on standby duty, where they were not allowed to travel more than 1 hour from your home base, so that the maximum time it will take you to return is 1 hour. It's so strange to me how anybody would put up with that. If, okay, say I didn't know anything about it and I was coming in thinking I was going to be working for someone maintaining their home and they give me this, I'm out. Like, okay, I'll see you later. This isn't worth any amount of money. No way. I mean, what are we like? It's almost like how you would treat royalty back, when we had monarchies. I don't know. It's very, very weird. And then there was a testimony that came out, which was how Ghislaine and Epstein did have relations with the 14-year-old victim, and that Ghislaine, and I don't know if I'm saying that right, if it's Ghislaine or Ghislaine, I have no idea. Ghislaine, but I think it is Ghislaine. And how she participated in the encounters, and that was given on testimony. And I will also tell you, if you really want to stay up to date with this trial, go to YouTube, check out Good Logic. That's Lawgic. Good Logic. He's been attending the trial every single day, posting little updates throughout the day while they take breaks and take lunch. And then at the end of the night, he does a long live stream and just goes over everything that happened during the trial that day. So that's a good way to keep up with it. Um, but this was a testimony, and I think it might have been from day 2. I'm not sure. Maybe day 3. I can't keep up with the actual day numbers. So, it's a woman who goes by the pseudonym of Jane. Now, Jane is not gaining anything out of testifying in this trial. She already actually settled with Epstein's estate over everything that happened to her, and I think she ended up with like $2.2 million in a settlement. And she wants to be kept anonymous because this is about helping other women, but allowing her to continue to just live life, move on. So she doesn't want anybody to know who she is. But supposedly she's an actress and she's been acting for 22 years in like daytime drama. But that's all I know. So she testified Tuesday that Ghislaine Maxwell watched the late convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein have relations with the accuser when she was just 14 years old in 1994. Maxwell befriended the girl, arranged the meetings, and would sometimes participate in the encounters. And she's now in her 40s. And apparently they met at some kind of like performing arts camp, and they presented themselves as benefactors of the camp, and that Epstein can like hand out scholarships and things like that. That's kind of how they lured her in. Her father had just passed away several months before that. She didn't have a very good home life. Her mother was not a very good mother. They were very poor. So it's kind of like these are the types of girls that they can manipulate easily because of their situations. I mean, that's how I'm looking at it. I don't know if that's how they chose them, but to me, that would seem that that's how they did it. So, on one occasion at Epstein's home, the abuser took her to his pool by the hand and pulled his pants down, according to the Daily Caller's reporting of Jane's testimony. Jane also said that Maxwell showed the girl how Epstein liked to be pleasured. So, these are some quotes that she said on the stand. He pulled me on top of himself and proceeded to masturbate on me, and then he got up and went into the bathroom and cleaned himself up. I was terrified and felt gross, and I felt ashamed. Maxwell allegedly also demonstrated to the 14-year-old how Epstein liked to be massaged, she said, describing the defendant's demeanor as very casual. Daily Wire reporter Mariad Elordi, who was reporting from the courtroom in New York, detailed that Jane said on the stand that she was courted by Epstein and Maxwell while attending a summer camp in Michigan. Months earlier, her father had died and the family was in financial hurt. Epstein promised to finance Jane's singing career. At first, the meetings with Jane were accompanied by her mother, but eventually Jane said she was invited to attend alone. Those meetups eventually included penetrative sex and orgies. Some included both Epstein and Maxwell. Elordi reported on Tuesday on some of the alleged sexual encounters. So it's another quote from the stand. Maxwell herself personally participated in abusing her, Jane testified. In one instance, Maxwell and Epstein abused her at the same time in Epstein's bedroom. They moved Jane over to the bed, took their clothes off, and instructed her to take her top off. The pair began to fondle each other while casually giggling, and Epstein masturbated, Jane said. So Lawrence Visosky, Epstein's pilot of nearly 30 years, acknowledged in court that he did indeed see Jane on flights, but claimed he thought she was at least 20. And he says this of all the passengers, by the way. Visosky testified that he met Jane but believed she was at least 20, calling her a mature woman, the Daily Wire reported. He vehemently denied being aware of any sexual activity on Epstein's planes or sexual abuse of minors by Epstein or Maxwell. Lisa Bloom, an attorney, called Jane's testimony riveting and heartbreaking. Prosecution's opening was masterful storytelling. Jane, 14, met a man and woman at her summer camp, she posted Tuesday. They lured her with scholarship promises. The man and woman were Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. 3 more underage girls will tell a similar story. Riveting, heartbreaking. Ghislaine Maxwell normalized Epstein's predation of underage girls, the prosecutor said repeatedly, added Bloom. She was Epstein's best friend and right hand. She trafficked girls to him and in exchange lived a life of luxury. So simple, yet so hard to fathom. Yeah, that's the thing that blew my mind is when before the trial started, they wanted to make a suggestion that possibly Ghislaine was a victim herself of Epstein. And while I can't say for sure that maybe it didn't start out that way because I don't know enough about these people, but let's just say that it did start out that way. That he did manipulate her and kind of coaxed her into being this person that she is. At some point over this, I don't know, decades of luring young girls to him, at some point you have to realize that what you're doing is wrong and you put a stop to it. At some point, regardless of what you think could happen to you, what might be said about you, that you're going to lose all the luxuries in your life. I can't fathom someone that is not wholly involved and just as sick and twisted as Epstein allowing it to continue if they were also a victim at one point in time. I can't fathom that and I don't believe it. But we'll see how they try to pull that one off. So that's what's going on there. Very interesting. It is heartbreaking to see the girls that went through this stuff, and hopefully somebody's got to pay for it. And while I believe that Epstein is paying for it today, burning in hell for the person he was, it would still be nice to see some justice served on earth first. So we'll see what happens there. Okay, moving out of that, let's talk about Joy Reid. She had okay, let me tell you. I thought Joy Behar was the worst Joy ever. I've come to find that Joy Reid is definitely the worst Joy. And what an ironic name because she is no joy to listen to. Her voice is like nails down a chalkboard. It's grating. I can tell you that. I don't like listening to her. But Joy Reid and Rick Wilson, whoever the heck that is, they laugh at all of us dumb red state Americans. And, I have to say, I don't know if Joy Reid is college educated. Maybe she is. She's probably got some, being in media and being pretending to be a journalist. I don't know if she used to actually do real journalism. Journalisming? Is that how you say that? Journalisming? Regardless, if she's college educated, I had 20, 27 hours of college hours. That's what I have. I didn't finish. I did graduate high school, but I would wager a lot that I am smarter than Joy Reid. I would. I have no doubt that I'm smarter than she is. And because it's not about what you learn, it's not book smarts, it's not what you're taught in school. Common sense is more valuable than anything that you're indoctrinated in college. That I fully believe. So to see them making fun of red state Americans, it's laughable because I just look at them and I have to laugh because they are so blind and ignorant and really stupid. But they want to say that I'm ignorant because what? I'm a Southerner. I'm a redneck. So what? Anyway, let's see what they had to say. So, MSNBC's Joy Reid and Rick Wilson, a co founder of the scandal plagued Lincoln Project, well, then it means nothing coming from this idiot either, took turns insulting red state Americans on Monday night, calling any buddy who has not had the Fauci ouchie American a dumb AWS and dreaming of putting Republicans under a glass dome to create, quote unquote, a dumb estuary. Okay. I mean, they think they're so clever, right? Reid mused that Republicans hope to keep alive just enough conservative voters to, quote unquote, intimidate black voters and make sure they can't vote. Um, I I don't know where they come up with these things that they think we are about. Because honestly, what we want is we just want people to vote for what's right, to do what's right. And if that brings black, white, red, yellow, green, purple, it doesn't matter. That brings us all together, that we're all the more better for it. We are all the more better to come together and stand up for what's right. And I'll do that right alongside anybody, as long as they're willing to take that stand with me. And I don't care their background, their race, their ethnicity, their religion. I don't care. Their sexual orientation. If they are tired of all of what's going on in America with the left, then I'll stand right alongside them and fight back. That's all I want. The name calling session began as Wilson, co founder of the anti Republican organization beset by allegations that another of its co founders sexually harassed young males, accused Republican governors like Florida's Ron DeSantis and Texas's Governor Abbott of playing stupid games by allowing Americans fired for refusing to obey their employers' mandates to collect unemployment benefits. Well, because they finally. Okay, so here's the thing: the left will take power where a lot of people don't think that they should have power to do, right? They'll pluck it up if you let them have it, and they'll take it and they will use it. And the only way that conservatives can fight back against that is to take the same power and use it, but use it for what's right. So if you think it's overstepping to tell a private business that they cannot mandate their employees to get the Fauci ouchie, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that because they're doing what's right. And sometimes you have to do the same thing that the left is doing, not for the same reasons and not with the same actions, but you have to do exactly what they're doing, but do it for what's right and what's good. And I believe that DeSantis and Abbott have it correct. You're violating our constitutional rights by saying that we have to tell you that we've had the Fauci ouchie and show proof of it, and also HIPAA laws that are laws. They're not just policies for medical people, it's a law. And private businesses do not have a right to demand that of you, to share that information, period. He then broadened his attacks to Americans who, he said, didn't take the responsible adult human step to get the Fauci ouchie. Well, I took the responsible adult human step to assess the risk myself. It's been 2 years, okay? 2 years. Now, I know I said it's possible that I did get it when it first came around back in February of 2020 during the Super Bowl, right before the lockdowns in March, right? I was sick. I had a cough. I was getting slightly dizzy. The cough lasted a couple weeks, and every now and then I would get dizzy. That was about it. Now, of course, I never went and got tested, and I don't even know if we had tests at that time. I don't remember. But that was all I had. And if that was what it wasn't that bad. But if it was something else, then in the 2 years it's been around, that I've been working the entire time, that I deal with public on a daily basis, that I wasn't wearing masks, that I wasn't social distancing, that I was living life as normally as I possibly could keep living, I've not gotten it. So what that tells me is I don't need it. I'm 35. I'm pretty healthy. I'm not overweight. So, I exercise. I work. I'm on my feet, 6 days a week working, 55, 56 hours a week. I'm constantly doing something. I think I'm in a pretty good place to not need it. So I'm not going to get it. And it's not because I don't think maybe it could help me if I did get sick and make symptoms more mild. My problem is I don't know the long-term effects of it. That's what concerns me. What might happen 1 year from now, 5 years from now? I don't know. So I don't want to take that risk. And I think I have that right. In fact, I know. It's not I think. I know I have that right. And no government, no politician, no doctor, no employer can tell me otherwise. It's just that simple. Very simple. I missed that part when I was a young man reading William F. Buckley Jr. and Frederick von Hayek and Russell Kirk and all of the conservative greats. I missed the part about being a dumb ASS when it comes to trying to save people's lives, Wilson said. Eventually, one day, I'm going to have to figure out how I do like a bleep sound for anytime someone uses profanity. So I don't have to say it or spell it. I can just bleep it and you get the idea. I'm not sure how to do that. So Reid laughed loudly at Wilson's insult of red state Americans. Later in the show, Reid speculated about cordoning off Republican stupidity from the rest of the nation in a macabre science experiment. It's almost like if we had a dome over the United States, there'd be part of it that is like a dumbassery, right, where people are living in there, killing their own constituents, getting their own constituents sick, willing to let people die, Reid said. Wilson then burst out laughing. Is there any way to crack that little dumb estuary and let some people out, or are they just going to stay in there, get sick, and maybe die? She asked. Wilson replied by calling Republican-led states like Florida, Mississippi, and Alabama, as well as Louisiana, which is governed by a pro-life Democrat, basically Darwin's waiting room. These people are going to either decide they're going to get the Fauci ouchie, or they're going to continue to watch their friends and neighbors and their family members die off. Well, I haven't had any friends or family members die off. Just so you know. I have not known anybody yet who's died of it. My mom had it. My brother had it. They're fine. They're good. My sister, her whole family had it. None of them died off. He added they had been misled by Fox News, which he claimed was an outright propaganda network against Fauci ouchie for months and months and months, although the network produced public service announcements encouraging its viewers to get the Fauci ouchie. Pain is the only teacher in politics, so you're going to see states where people die off, Wilson said. It's so ironic that they're saying Fox News is, propaganda. Reid concluded the segment by playing the race card. It's their own voters, but I guess they figured there will be enough of them left to watch the polls and intimidate black voters and make sure they can't vote, and they figured that's all they need, she said. The decision to call half of the electorate ignorant seemed like a flashback to last January, when Wilson and New York Times author Wajahat Ali joined CNN host Don Lemon to say that Trump voters are backwoods imbeciles who don't know anything about your geography and your spelling and your math and your reading. Put me to the test. I can spell like no other. Spelling is one of my strong suits. I can spell almost anything. I'm pretty good at it. Not that that matters. As Wilson and Ali poured on the insults, Lemon laughed until he cried, dabbing tears from his eyes. The Republican National Committee found the episode so condescending and elitist that they turned the segment into a campaign ad. Yeah, and I would rather be someone who is uneducated than to be, someone who sexually assaults a stranger, a man, and now he's going to be maybe facing charges for it. Don Lemon, I'm sorry. You know, what did he do? He like touched himself and like rubbed his hand on the guy's face. I'd rather be dumb, poor, stupid, and homeless than be like Don Lemon. So they turned it into a campaign ad, which not really interested in watching it, but you can if you want. So the left's decision to insult much of the country's electorate harkens back to Hillary Clinton's 2016 faux pas of revealing that she considered half of future President Donald Trump's supporters deplorables and irredeemable. Another moment of deja vu came when Reid asked Dr. Fauci whether the new variant or a successor mutation might become too impossible for the Fauci ouchie to restrain, and had Dr. Fauci publicly rebuff her a second time. My team is sick of me saying this, but I've been likening this um, to like the alien in the movie Aliens. Its whole goal is to jump into different people and mutate into different kinds of aliens, she said. At some point, isn't it true this thing is going to mutate to a kind of thing that we can't stop with any Fauci ouchie or any treatment? No, replied Fauci flatly. That would be really highly unlikely, Joy. Reid previously asked Dr. Fauci the same question, nearly word for word, on the September 7th episode of The Readout, as the author reported at the Daily Wire. So she wants him to say it, but he can't because it's not true. On Monday's show, Reid also implied that President Donald Trump had been a client of Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein had a lot of information, including a lot of high profile alleged clients' names. Here's one of them. Here's Donald Trump. Epstein, who died in prison despite strict guarding procedures, had a painting of former President Bill Clinton wearing a blue dress. Clinton flew on Epstein's private jet, the Lolita Express, at least 26 times, according to an analysis of flight logs. So there's the connection to that. The ignorance is so abundant, and every time you read something or uh, read their quotes, I feel like I lose some brain cells. And, sometimes you gotta like regenerate before you start reading these idiotic comments again. It makes you want to just high five them in the face for just how ridiculously dumb these people are. Um, let's what is this? Okay, no. Let's talk about Chris Cuomo real quick because I thought it was very interesting. Um, he did release a statement responding to CNN actually firing him. So now he's just no longer on like a probation. He's been fired, which I think is very interesting because you're starting to really see the left turn on their own, and it's quite fun to watch. You knew this was coming. I have something in my eye. You knew this was coming, and I can't get it out. And it can never just go the way they want it to go. Eventually, they will go so far that even people on their side will be like, whoa, whoa, okay, wait, that's a step too far. That's really over the line. And then they start attacking their own. So, if you don't know, he supposedly was trying to help his brother, Andrew Cuomo, navigate public relations battle over his sexual misconduct allegations, and I think trying to get information on his accusers. So he was suspended earlier this week pending further evaluation of new information that came to light about his involvement with his brother's defense. And he was suspended on Tuesday after documents released by New York Attorney General Letitia James showed that he was more involved in helping his brother than he previously disclosed. Okay, so Chris Cuomo says, "This is not how I want my time at CNN to end, but I have already told you why and how I helped my brother. So let me now say, as disappointing as this is, I cannot be more proud of the team at Cuomo Primetime and the work we did as CNN's #1 show in the most competitive time slot. I owe them all and will miss that group of special people who did really important work." Um, Chris Cuomo weighed in on the allegations made against his brother during an interview this week. He said the game has rules. And one of the general principles is you can fight against the other party and you can fight against the media, but only if you have your party. Andrew had his party enforcing a rule against him that if you have accusations, you have problems, and you don't really get to really vet the accusations, and you don't get to go against your accusers. Um, So that is too much, and that is why he had to resign. I did not want him to resign in the beginning because I believed him, but eventually, when there wasn't going to be due process and his party was against him, he obviously the Republicans weren't going to help him, then he had no choice because he couldn't do the work of the state anymore. And I will tell you this, I said that Cuomo should not have resigned as governor just because he had accusations. Whether or not I believe him, I don't know. I need more evidence to say whether or not. But I don't think that he should have resigned. I think he should have made them prove that he was guilty of something. And I understand resigning doesn't necessarily mean you're guilty, but it does look bad that you didn't allow yourself to go through due process. And I think if you would have stood your ground, I know there were other Republicans that said he should have stood his ground, even though they disagreed with how he was governing the state. There were Republicans that said he should have stayed. I want to talk about the Supreme Court arguments about the Mississippi abortion law. Okay. Now, I got these notes off of Louder with Crowder because I didn't want to go digging for sources myself. So the Supreme Court had the hearing, and they were hearing Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. In dispute is Mississippi's ban on abortion after 15 weeks, and the case will determine whether all pre-viability prohibitions on elective abortions are unconstitutional. And of course, it's not a constitutional right. Even when Justice Thomas was asking, hey, tell me, show me. I know where the First Amendment is, and the Second, and the Fifth. Show me where the constitutional right is to an abortion. And of course, they can't because it's not there. So, the history of Roe, first of all. Judy Smith, the head of the Birth Control Information Center at the University of Texas in Austin, was looking for a case to legalize abortion in Texas. Smith needed a lawyer to take the case for free, and she found Sarah Weddington. They first chose married couple Marcia and David King, who had 2 previous abortions in Mexico. But the Kings had no standing or possible legal relief since they were describing a future problem and were not currently pregnant. So the attorneys found pregnant Norma McCorvey. And McCorvey never had an abortion. Just mind you of that. So here are the rulings. So Roe is based on the right to privacy established by Griswold versus Connecticut, which was the right to birth control. That's what that was for. So the court ruled that abortion was protected by the due process clause of the 14th Amendment. And according to the court, this clause contains an inherent, quote, fundamental right to privacy, end quote, which includes abortions. So Roe v. Wade decided when abortions could legally occur by creating the trimester framework. Not doctors, just lawyers arbitrarily determining viability. And based on these arbitrary timelines, the court ruled so during the first trimester, the decision to terminate the pregnancy was solely at the discretion of the woman. After the first trimester, the state could regulate procedure. During the second trimester, the state could regulate but not outlaw abortions in the interest of the mother's health. And after the second trimester, the fetus became viable and the state could regulate or outlaw abortions in the interest of the potential life except when necessary to preserve the life or health of the mother. Even Ruth Bader Ginsburg thought that Roe was out of the court's typical scope. And I can prove that. Now, during her tenure on the court, which spanned more than a quarter of a century, Ginsburg consistently voted to strike down restrictions on abortion. The liberal justice was among the majority of justices who struck down a Nebraska law banning partial birth abortion in Stenberg versus Carhart, and who struck down laws in Texas and Louisiana requiring abortionists to have admitting privileges at hospitals near the clinics where they work. She dissented in the case of Gonzalez versus Carhart, where the Supreme Court upheld the federal partial birth abortion ban act. Conservative commentator Steven Crowder, host of the Louder with Crowder podcast, posted some of Ginsburg's comments about Roe v. Wade on his Twitter account Wednesday, the same day the Supreme Court heard oral arguments in Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health. In the Dobbs case, the justices will decide whether to uphold Mississippi's 15-week abortion ban or affirm a lower court ruling striking it down. In one of the shared quotes by Crowder during his show on Thursday, Ginsburg elaborated on her concerns about Roe v. Wade. In the clip posted by Bloomberg of Ginsburg talking with David Rubenstein in 2019, she asserted that, quote, some women felt that I should have been 100% in favor of Roe v. Wade because I wasn't, end quote. In a separate statement shared by Crowder and many other pro-lifers this week, Ginsburg is seen during a talk at the University of Chicago Law School on May 11, 2013, saying, quote, Roe isn't really about the women's choice, is it? It's about the doctor's freedom to practice. It wasn't woman-centered, it was physician-centered, end quote. She said, my criticism of Roe is that it seemed to have stopped the momentum on the side of change. During the remarks on the David Rubenstein Show peer-to-peer conversations in 2019, Ginsburg recalled that at the time President Clinton was first considering appointing her to the Supreme Court in 1993, some women opposed her nomination because of some of her comments about Roe v. Wade. Ginsburg elaborated on the aspects of her analysis that raised concerns among some pro-choice women at the time. She said the court had an easy target, but that because the Texas law was the most extreme in the nation. Ginsburg explained that based on the Texas law at the center of Roe v. Wade, abortion could be had only if necessary to save the woman's life, with no exceptions for rape or incest. I thought that Roe v. Wade was an easy case and the Supreme Court could have held that most extreme law unconstitutional and put down its pen. Instead, the court wrote an opinion that made every abortion restriction in the country illegal in one fell swoop, and that was not the way that the court ordinarily operates. The history of the years since then is that the momentum has been on the other side. The cases that we got now on abortion are all about restrictions on access to abortion and not about expanding the rights of women. As the Dobbs case dominated national headlines, Crowder raised concerns that big tech companies such as Google, which largely sympathize with the pro-abortion movement and support Roe v. Wade, are working to suppress Ginsburg's remarks on the Supreme Court case. In the show notes for the December 2nd episode of his podcast, Crowder showed how Google had suppressed searches for her opinion of the case. And I can show you here how it does that. If you type in Ruth Bader Ginsburg Roe v., what comes up? Nothing. But if you just search Ruth Bader Ginsburg, it brings up quotes, movie, young, age, costume, accomplishments, husbands, cause of death, book, daughter. That's it. And it is suppressing it. So it doesn't autofill. But that's the thing. She didn't agree with Roe v. Wade. She didn't think that that's how it should have been done. Okay? So let's talk about reversing Roe. Most people, because they don't understand how it works, believe that if Roe v. Wade is overturned at the federal level, that is going to outlaw abortion across the country. And that is not what is going to happen. All it does is it keeps the federal government out of making decisions on if abortions can be legal and when they should not be legal any longer. All turning over Roe v. Wade does is send that decision back down to the state government, which is where it should stay. The state should get to decide whether or not abortion will be legal in their state, and if they're going to allow it, whether it'll be just for rape and incest, and up to when they can detect a heartbeat, like the Texas abortion ban, the heartbeat bill. After a heartbeat is detected, you can no longer get an abortion, and that's about at 6 weeks. It's just going to be the state's decision. So California will probably keep it completely legal all the way up to and including birth. And it would not surprise me if you see states like California and New York that are completely pro-choice, really not pro-choice, but pro-murder, that they would even offer assistance to women, say Texas bans abortion outright altogether, and you can't get one in Texas at all for any reason. Let's just say that. I doubt that'll happen, but let's just say it does. It wouldn't surprise me if California or New York or other states that would, Virginia maybe even, would offer assistance to these women stuck in these states that are not allowed to go and have their baby killed, and give them travel expenses to come to their state, maybe a plane ticket, or get them a rental car to get there if they're too far along to even fly, and pay for the abortion, pay for a hotel for them to stay in to recover, and for their travel expenses back home. I would not put it past those people because this is how sacred killing their child is to them. So we'll see what happens. And I would love to see Roe v. Wade overturned. John Doyle once said that he believes that his generation is the generation that will see it happen. And I would love nothing more than to see that overturned at the Supreme Court. And then to see Texas install some more strict laws on abortion. So, Chief Justice Roberts, well, really quick. It appears there are 6 votes on the court for gutting Roe and 5 for reversing it altogether. One must remember that in a major case like this, the justices of the court need no persuasion from the lawyers. Instead, it is through the lawyers that the justices have an initial conversation with each other about the case. Chief Justice Roberts, who is pro-life but also the Chief Justice, takes a restrained view of reversals. He sees it as his duty to protect the court. He wants to end the so-called viability standard the court maintains that prohibits banning abortion prior to the nebulous point of fetal viability. Roberts seemed to argue that 15 weeks is fine as a standard. Justices Elena Kagan and Neil Gorsuch suggested such a standard would not work. Gorsuch, along with Samuel Alito, Brett Kavanaugh, and Clarence Thomas, seemed fully prepared to end Roe. The newest justice, Amy Coney Barrett, was more obtuse, but seemed inclined to end Roe, though possibly inclined to just gut it with Roberts. The chief problem with Roe v. Wade is that no one can find it in the Constitution. In fact, Roe is not just 1 degree removed from the Constitution, but 2 degrees away from the Constitution. To get to Roe, one must first get through Griswold versus Connecticut, which found that within the right to privacy was a marital right of privacy. It removed privacy to the penumbras of the Constitution. Only from there can one get to Roe. One can fairly well gather from the Constitution's 4th and 5th Amendments that there's a right to privacy of some kind. Griswold finds an explicit right to marital privacy related to, for example, the use of contraception within that right to privacy. Roe then goes a step further to find as a right to privacy a woman's right to kill her unborn child. No reasonable reading of the Constitution suggests that right exists within the Constitution, and almost all states had bans on abortion when those states ratified the 14th Amendment. The plain reading of the Constitution suggests no abortion right at all, let alone one broken down into trimesters. No state can ban abortion in the first. States can impose restrictions during the second. States can prohibit in the third with reasonable exceptions. The subsequent case of Casey versus Planned Parenthood moved the standard from trimesters to viability. Where the Constitution is silent, the 50 states are supposed to speak. Each state should be able to set its own laws regulating abortion. 7 men on the United States Supreme Court in 1973 conjured up a right to an abortion within the penumbras of the other penumbras of various amendments to the Constitution. The late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg acknowledged the shoddiness of the decision, even as she supported the right to kill children. Roe takes the Constitution, a document written so American citizens should understand their rights and government, and hands it over to a professional class of life-tenured judges and lawyers who can conjure at will their coveted requests from the constitutional framework. We are, with Roe, a nation of judges and lawyers, not men and women. It began a series of cases that separate citizens from the Constitution, requiring a near divine and always infallible intermediary in a black robe to tell the citizen what his Constitution actually says. With the Second Amendment, the average citizen can ascertain the right of gun ownership in America. With abortion, no citizens not trained in the dark arts of liberal legal interpretation and how to read the breadth of a living piece of paper can even understand and so can never truly respect the rule of law. The law becomes not the compact of governance, but the possession of the great says who says what the law is, regardless of what the law plainly means. It is time to reverse Roe, and I cannot agree more. I am tired of seeing women use abortion as a means of contraceptives. Their selfishness of being irresponsible and not taking precautions to not get pregnant and then killing off that child. It absolutely disgusts me as a mother of 4 who at twice got pregnant when it was not of any benefit to me. It was a very bad time for me to be pregnant. There was no way I was going to have such a hard time supporting another child. It was going to be a struggle for life until they were old enough to, move on and care for themselves and get jobs. But that's the consequence of being irresponsible. I don't have a right to kill a child because I could not, because I didn't have any self control and did something stupid. I knew what could result in what I was doing. I knew what could happen. I already had 2 kids. So I know I know the point of sex is to reproduce. That's the whole point of it. So I knew what could happen if I wasn't more careful. And I wasn't. I was irresponsible. I was stupid. And I made a mistake. But out of that mistake was born a wonderful miracle. And I see all kids in general are miracles. The fact that God chooses us to be the ones to nurture and shape and help raise these children, it should be a blessing, not some kind of curse that you feel you have to go murder off. I don't understand it. It's never been something that I could comprehend or fathom that any mother could do to their child. Any mother. I know I am not a perfect mom. I've made mistakes. I still make mistakes. But it doesn't make me a bad mom. It doesn't mean I don't care about my kids. It just means I'm human and I'm going to make mistakes. But to think that I would have rather have killed my child than to given them life as apparently God intended, otherwise I wouldn't have been pregnant because of my own selfish needs, because I didn't want a kid, because I couldn't physically, financially handle another kid. Well, that was my own fault. That was my own fault. I screwed up. And so did their dad. Big time. There's nothing, I can't think of a better blessing than children. I can't. Sure, it would have been nice to have done it more appropriately, got married, stayed married, had all my kids with my husband, but that's not what happened. And I can't change it. And I wouldn't change it because I wouldn't have the kids that I have. If I could go back in time, but still later on down the road end up with all my children, I would do that. But you don't get to remake those choices. Just like when you go and you murder your baby because you're being selfish and you don't want a kid, that is not something you can take back. You cannot change that. And you will regret it. You'll regret it. You may think you won't. But these people, these women that say that it's the best thing that they've ever done, they're liars. They're virtue signaling. They're looking for attention, some kind of validation, because I can guarantee you these women are empty and torn apart inside for the fact that they know that they killed their kid. Absolutely, that is what is going on. I just dealt with this with somebody. Someone who thought that they were pregnant, not ready to have a kid, in a state where it is very restrictive on getting abortions, and that's what she wanted to do. And I told her, you better be sure, because you cannot change it once it's done. Fortunately, she was not pregnant, and I don't have to see a friend go through that and make that choice and then watch her, I don't know, maybe have a mental breakdown, fall into depression for the choice that she made. I don't have to see my friend go through that now. I couldn't imagine. So this is the time that I hope that Roe v. Wade is overturned. I hope that abortion laws become more restrictive. And I've stood on this hill and I said I would die on this hill Any woman seeking an abortion and has one, any doctor who performs it, should be arrested, should be put in prison. It is murder. You would arrest and imprison them if they murdered a baby that is already born. They should be arrested and put in prison if they murder a baby in the womb. There is no difference. I want to promote Matt Walsh and his new book, Johnny the Walrus, because I just think it's absolutely hilarious. So I wanted to end on a more happy note. Um, Johnny the Walrus hit #1 on Amazon's LGBTQ plus list, and his response is priceless. So, Daily Wire podcast host and beloved children's author Matt Walsh landed the #1 best-selling new release LGBTQ plus book on Amazon this weekend. He tweeted out, "I now have the #1 LGBT book in the country. Any further criticism of me or my book is now homophobic. Checkmate." Walsh, a fierce cultural critic on the right, has also taken the liberty in changing his Twitter handle to better reflect his services to best-selling LGBT author Matt Walsh. The book challenges the radical transgender agenda being pushed on children, so it does fall into the LGBTQ plus category, but not in the way progressives would like. Johnny the Walrus features a young boy named Johnny with a wild imagination. The child envisions himself as many things, including a walrus. His progressive mommy knows her boy is a boy, but becomes pressured by her friends on social media to treat and transition her child to live his true identity as a walrus. Mommy is faced with the choice of either protecting her son or pleasing her friends. Um, Folks, you have to admit this is all extremely funny, Walsh continued via Twitter. Me becoming a #1 best-selling LGBT author is the twist no one saw coming. Posting a screenshot of a bad review from someone angry about Walsh's book and the messaging, the podcast host snarked, "I'm stunned by these bigoted one-star reviews attacking my #1 best-selling LGBT book. Written for people with deep insecurities, the bitter review reads, "Not a self-help book for insecurities, a booster shot of foolishness sure to deepen your insecurities." Fellow Daily Wire host commented on Walsh's ironic feat. "Needs to go in Twitter bio immediately," said Michael Knowles. Andrew Clavin wrote, "Tremendously proud of my fellow Virginian. Notably, Walsh became a resident of Virginia so he could speak out for parents outraged by Loudoun County District transgender policies that they argue violate their children. Walsh had to sign a lease to become a resident after an ultimately futile rule change effort was made to block his attendance and speaking at a school board meeting." Um, this past week, Johnny the Walrus sold out on Amazon mere hours after its publication. The book hit the #1 spot on the Amazon Movers and Shakers list early Tuesday and soon became the overall 4th best-selling book on the site hours later. The success of the book proves that people are tired of the children's book market being dominated by left-wing propaganda, Walsh told the Daily Wire. Also, it indicates perhaps that there is mostly untapped interest in walruses, he added, in true Walsh fashion. So, look, it's sold out, but if you can get it, I would definitely get it. I'm going to get it. I think it's hilarious. And I appreciate Matt for always fighting back against the culture that the left is trying to push. And just his dry humor, I relate and I really get it. So I appreciate it. Anyway, I'm going to end this here. I went a little longer today than I expected, going on a little, you know, don't murder your children tangent. So go to Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast. Subscribe to the show. You can leave me a review. 5 stars would be great if you could do that. And then also head over to my YouTube channel. Go like and share this video. Go watch the other ones. You can like and share those. Most of all, the best thing you can do to help me is subscribe to the channel and then hit the notification bell so you know when I upload new videos. I'm not uploading quite as often. I don't have as much time now that I'm back working 6 days a week. So my episodes would just go up whenever I have a chance to do it. There will always be a Monday episode, but there may be another one later in the week on a Tuesday, maybe a Friday, Saturday. Who knows? But I can always guarantee a Monday episode, and I appreciate all of your support, everybody who listens. I saw kind of a big jump in people listening to my last episode, so I really appreciate all of y'all that went and listened to that. It means a lot to me. So, also, don't forget to go check out the Scott Ford Show and his latest episode with our conversation. Leave a comment, like and share his, subscribe to his channel. It's a really good channel. If you like how I am, you're going to like how he is. We do a lot of the same stuff, little different views on things, but I think our goal of the end is the same, which is what matters. Anyway, I hope you have a good rest of your day, and God bless.